We are only in April, but we're already deep into the HHN 2026 speculation season. Construction has started inside the parks. Orlando has made their first announcement and started selling tickets. We've been hearing a lot of interesting rumors on stuff that could possibly come to the event this year. FORTNITE, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Killer Clowns, a bunch of stuff. So let's go ahead and talk about it. While nothing has been announced yet for Hollywood, John Murdy has stated that he has finished writing all the treatments for the 2026 event, meaning that the event is essentially locked down. There could still be some changes that we've seen before in previous years where stuff is pretty much completed and then there's a last minute change that could happen. That could always happen, but for right now, the event is set. Over in the Orlando side, the first announcement for the first house was actually revealed to be Jack and Oddfellow Chaos and Control. Now this brings us to our first rumor, which I find to be quite interesting. There was a rumor going around that we would get Jack the Clown in Hollywood as well. With the announcement of Jack coming back to Orlando and us hearing nothing pretty much from the Hollywood side, some people kind of question the idea whether or not he will come back to Hollywood this year. The rumor, as was present in the original speculation map from HHN Nightmares, was that this maze was supposed to be Jack versus Hollywood Harry, similar to what Orlando was doing. We're just replacing Dr. Oddfellow with Hollywood Harry, which is kind of a Hollywood staple at this point. If you aren't familiar with Hollywood Harry, he is kind of like an unofficial icon for the event. He started off in the Terror Tram back in 2016, and he has come back numerous times throughout the event's history. It would be pretty cool to see him meet with Jack the Clown, which is essentially the quintessential icon for Halloween Horror Nights over in Orlando. Now, I don't think that the announcement in Orlando necessarily derails the chances of this happening over in Hollywood. I actually think there's a pretty simple explanation as to why that announcement wasn't done in tandem with Orlando. Number one, given that the maze would be essentially completely different, we aren't featuring Dr. Oddfellow or featuring Hollywood Harry. It would be a little bit confusing to announce both of them at the same time. I do see them trying to distance themselves a little bit from that announcement. And I do think we are pushing announcement season back just for a little while, just as we did last year. And the key reason for that is going to be FanFest nights. Now, I do think they want to give FanFest nights a little bit of breathing room, kind of let it stand on its own before we start hearing stuff regarding the event for 2026, which I think makes a lot of sense. So I do think we'll probably get our first announcement right after FanFest nights begins, probably sometime around the middle. So I would say probably sometime around May, we would expect our first announcement. So I do think this maze is still pretty much on the table. I do think it's something that's going to happen. I do think that what Horror Nights is essentially trying to do with Jack the Clown is kind of turn him into an overarching villain that is present at most Halloween Horror Nights throughout the world. He has been at the Orlando event. He was obviously in Hollywood back in 2007, but we haven't seen him since then. He is also featured in Horror Unleashed, which is the Horror Nights Vegas experience. He is a pretty big part of that. He's also been featured in events overseas, such as Singapore. I believe he was in Japan once as well, too. And so what I think Universal is trying to do is establish Jack the Clown kind of as the face of Halloween Horror Nights, not just in Orlando, but for the whole brand as a whole. Now, I do think this kind of makes sense. We have been seeing, especially a lot in the last couple of years, how the Hollywood and Orlando events have been becoming increasingly similar. We've been seeing Hollywood borrow some originals that Orlando has done, and vice versa, where Orlando has done some originals that Hollywood has done. And we have been kind of sharing ideas with last year, even our Five Nights at Freddy's mazes being essentially identical one-on-one recreations from one another. So I do think that Universal is trying to make a little bit more of an effort to kind of unify the two events, unify the name as a whole, and kind of give the fans something synonymous with the brand, sort of like a Mickey-esque character for Disneyland. So I do think that this is what they're trying to do with Jack the Clown, and so I do think that he is going to be present in Hollywood for the 2026 event. On the topic of Killer Clowns, it does seem like Killer Clowns are going to have a big stronghold in Hollywood this year, with a lot of the event kind of being centered around various clowns from film franchises. So another rumor that we've been hearing is that Killer Clowns from Outer Space could be returning to Halloween Horror Nights as a maze. Now, this is a maze that we saw for the first time back in 2018. We also saw the maze come back in 2022, and so we are hearing now that this is a possibility of something that could come back to the event this year. I do think there's some stock in this rumor. We're very prone to doing repeats. We have been seeing a trend where we have been having repeats over the last couple of years. It's one of the mazes for the event. We saw this last year with Poltergeist. So I do think that this is a possibility as something that could come back to the event. With all the other clown stuff that's going on in the event, I do think it's a little bit of overkill that we're going to have Killer Clowns, we're going to have a Jack the Clown maze, and there's another rumor that we're going to talk about as well too. I do think it's a lot, but I wouldn't put it over them. Last year, clowns were a pretty big deal in Hollywood. We had obviously Art the Clown in the Terrifier maze, the Clown Scare Zone at the entrance of the park, which was a really big hit actually. So I do see Universal kind of taking note of that, seeing Killer Clowns really sells with people, and kind of this year going all in on that. Jack the Clown maze, this as being a possibility to come back. which also leads us into our next rumor, the idea that Terrifier and Art the Clown are coming back to Halloween Horror Nights, but not as a maze. Art the Clown would essentially take over the Terror Tram. Now, this is another one that I think is a pretty big possibility. If you ask me, I think it's a no-brainer that Terrifier would be coming back to the event, that Art the Clown would be present at Halloween Horror Nights in one way, shape, or form. Last year was such a huge hit, the roaming art character, the Terrifier maze, which had insane wait times. So I don't see a reason why Universal wouldn't want to bring him back to the event. Now, incorporating him into the Terror Tram would be a pretty smart idea. It would be pretty similar to stuff we've seen before in the past, such as back in 2016, Hollywood Harry Tram that we saw. I think this could be something similar to that, where we have Art the Clown joined by a gang of killer clowns, maybe even the clowns from the opening scare zone from last year. And they're just kind of going around the backlot, causing mayhem, running havoc. Art the Clown walks around throughout the whole thing, stalks you at different points. It would be pretty cool to see kind of like Art the Clown popping out of the Bates Motel, kind of doing like a little showcase kill out there, and then moving on like the World of World sets as well too. So I do think that this is pretty much a no-brainer. I do see Terrifier coming back to the event. One of the strangest rumors that we've been hearing is that FORTNITE could be coming to Halloween Horror Nights as a scare zone. Now, this isn't the first time we've heard this rumor. Universal actually did a tie-in with FORTNITE for a Halloween season, I believe a couple years ago. It might have been pre-COVID, where they had the FORTNITE bus outside of the Universal Theater, and that kind of sparked a lot of speculation within fans as to whether or not FORTNITE could come to Halloween Horror Nights, maybe even be the theme of the Terror Tram. Personally, I was never really fond of that idea. I don't play FORTNITE. If you're a grown adult playing FORTNITE, grow up. I'm kidding. It's just not my taste. So the idea would be to feature a FORTNITEmare scare zone, which is what FORTNITE calls their Halloween tie-ins. Now, I know they've done collaborations with certain stuff that we've seen before at Halloween Horror Nights. They did one with Terrifier last year. I believe they're doing a collab with Universal as well too. I think they've done characters such as like Marty McFly, and there's even talk that the Universal monsters might come to FORTNITE. So this could be a scare zone that could kind of incorporate a lot of those characters that are based around IPs, just kind of around like the FORTNITE name. So you could see characters like Art the Clown in here, the Universal monsters, Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which was also present there. Now this does kind of bring up a lot of questions, and it could be a legal nightmare in a sort of sense, where you would have to secure the rights to all these separate characters that they do feature in FORTNITE. Now, I also think that they would include, original characters that are designed specifically for FORTNITE. I think there's like a banana dude in there, and like another one that kind of looks like a skeleton. Again, I don't play the game, so I don't know the names of the characters or who they are, what they look like. I'm not too fond of the idea. That is what was being discussed by fans regarding FORTNITE coming to Halloween Horror Nights. Now, this rumor, I did believe, originated over on like the forums. So there was people talking about it on the forums, and it kind of spread like wildfire all over social media. But we have heard somebody come out and say that they actually started the rumor and that there's nothing really confirmed to it. So now this is something, again, if you're new to speculation season, this happens pretty much every year, where somebody kind of makes a joke out there or throws something out there, and it gets taken seriously. A lot of these people who are said to be scoopers or know stuff on the inside, a lot of them are actually full of shit, believe it or not. But that kind of leads to rumors starting out of nowhere, people spreading them like wildfire, and next thing you know, it never happens. So that could be the case with FORTNITE. Would be the best case scenario, if you ask me. But this is a rumor that has been thrown out there. It would be interesting overall. I mean, again, I don't really want to see this at the event. I think that FORTNITE coming to Halloween Horror Nights kind of does take it a little step too far into like the whole family-friendly kind of atmosphere that we've been trying to avoid. Last year really kind of cut back from that with Terrifier and a lot of the other haunted attractions that we had that really leaned heavy into like the gore, and it kind of felt a little bit more like old school HHN. So I do think they are starting to stray away from a lot of those like family-friendly kind of IPs. I personally don't think it would happen, but again, that is a rumor that is being thrown out there. Now, another rumor that we've been hearing is the possibility that Texas Chainsaw Massacre could be coming back to the event. Now this started over on the Orlando side. There was a new speculation map that was revealed by somebody who had done speculation maps in the past. I know their track record isn't the best, but it seems to be about 75% accurate most of the time. And so one of the IPs it has listed on the Orlando speculation map is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I do think this is a little bit more plausible over in Orlando. We have seen Texas Chainsaw quite a lot in Hollywood. Last time we saw it was actually 2 years ago. It was back in 2024. So I do think it's pretty recent in terms of like when Hollywood has seen it. I do think that if this does happen, this could be something to be like an Orlando exclusive. Again, this kind of ties into the reason why Jack the Clown is being pushed so heavily and why it might come to Halloween Horror Nights in Hollywood this year. The Texas Chainsaw brand is one that I know the rights are quite easy to acquire, and so they have used it pretty much several times over the years. It is one of the IPs that is present over at Horror Unleashed in Vegas, so it is a pretty accessible one. It's a pretty easy kind of filler IP, I like to call it. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, but I do think we have seen Leatherface quite a bit at HHN, and I do think that it would be kind of nice to give it a little bit of a rest, at least for another 5, 6 years. But as far as this coming to Hollywood, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that this is happening, especially if the rumors are true again that Killer Clowns from Outer Space is returning. I don't see two mazes coming back, and one especially that we featured just so recently. And this actually leads to our final rumor, which is that Hellraiser actually won't be happening at HHN this year. So this again stems from that speculation map. It does seem like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is the maze that replaced Hellraiser on that map. I don't think that that is the case. I do think that Hellraiser is still happening until we hear essentially otherwise. I do think it's a pretty big IP. It does make sense for it to come to the event. The only issue that I do see with that, as I talked about in my original speculation video, is that the rights are quite questionable. Last we heard of it, they were tied up with 20th Century Fox, which is obviously owned by Disney, which obviously isn't the easiest to work with. But I do think that a lot of those rights are kind of freed up, and they have been a little bit more accessible. We have been seeing stuff like a Hellraiser game that's being developed. Trick or Treat Studios finally has rights to do Hellraiser masks and products. So I think that's a pretty big sign that the rights are a little bit more accessible and that it should be a little bit easier for Universal Studios to acquire, which is the reason why I do think it's still happening. And if it does happen, it will happen this year. So that's everything we've been hearing as far as rumors, speculations for HHN 2026. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think about all these rumors about what's possibly coming to the event. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think is actually coming to the event. Let me know of any rumors or speculation you have heard about that we didn't cover in this video. Be sure to like and subscribe. I will be posting a lot more of these. We are doing construction. Construction season has started. We are going to be going into the park, doing all those cool construction updates as the season goes on, seeing how the event progresses. So it should be pretty cool. So be sure to be on the lookout for those. Hit the notification bell to be notified when those videos do drop. But yeah, once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.